Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So this one is going to be an update to the information from yesterday, where of course we got the big news. There is a AAA Avatar video game coming. IGN got to do the exclusive kind of early announcement, but we also knew that the Braving the Elements, the official Avatar podcast, was going to have an episode about gaming news. They confirmed that, and now we have the details on this, plus most of the core information that actually comes from the episode, because the episode is actually available if you are an Apple Podcast Premium subscriber to Braving the Elements. So you can get like a free trial and stuff like that. Do keep in mind though, the actual podcast is just going to be released to everyone for free normally on Tuesday, and then there's going to be a video. The YouTube version of the podcast is going up, I think, late Tuesday, kind of into Wednesday, and there is going to be some sort of a visual kind of element to it here, in that as far as I'm aware, some sort of a key piece of art was revealed, and we will get to see it, I think, on the video version of the podcast in relation to the AAA game. So it'll be our first time seeing that on Wednesday. So the recommendation probably is don't go to any great lengths, I think, to, feel like you have to listen to the podcast super early. We have most of the information, and we just pretty much have to wait until Tuesday, Wednesday for the proper kind of full reveal on all of this. But you can see here the description for the podcast episode is like they're getting an inside scoop. They have Doug Rosen on, who is the SVP of Games and Emerging Media at Paramount. There was a quote from him in the IGN article yesterday talking about the AAA game, and so it makes sense that they've kind of lined this up to be an extra layer of information. He shares a first look with Janet and Dante into some of the exciting projects set to expand the Avatar gaming world. So multiple games are going to be talked about here, and you can see here I put up this information, and then Brittany, who has in the past informed me about stuff that happens is going to be happening on the podcast, listened to the episode. She's a premium subscriber and has basically given a rundown on the key information that actually is revealed on the podcast. So let's cover these tweets here. And then obviously, like, when we get to next week, we can go more into what the exact quotes are, along with any visuals that happen. So at the start, they end up talking about Avatar Fortnite, which has already happened. Avatar Roblox, which I don't know if it's already happened or is still scheduled to happen. I actually just have completely lost track of this. I'm not super into Roblox anyway. And then also the upcoming mobile game Realms Collide, which is meant to be out at some point this year, but seems to be struggling with some bugs, and they don't seem to be able to confirm a date. But apparently there was nothing new here said about any of these things. So kind of actually a little bit disappointing perhaps on the Fortnite front that they maybe didn't have anything to tease in terms of new stuff coming to Fortnite. But anyway, the fighting game. So this is the other Avatar game. I referenced this in the video yesterday. We did have, I think it was much earlier this year, a fighting game for Avatar announced. Again, very few details on it, but apparently we see here it's coming out next year, so it's going to be a 2025 game, heavily based on / meant to feel like Street Fighter. So that's the specific type of fighting game that it's maybe trying to be. 10 characters available at launch. I've got to admit, that seems pretty light, but I sort of get it that they, with these type of games, if they're trying to make it into something significant, putting a ton of effort into each character to make them feel very, very unique, especially in Avatar, where a lot of your characters, sure, they all have unique styles, but fundamentally, like, firebenders are going to be doing firebending attacks. You understand why, like, okay, they probably have to actually put quite a bit of nuance into each character to make them feel unique. Doug said that the gang, apparently referred to here as the Core 4, so I'm not sure who's specifically referred to there, because there's 6 Team Avatar members. There's 5 of them are like the absolute main characters, because Suki kind of joins right towards the end. So who's the Core 4? Like, are we talking about the benders of the group here, for like Aang for air, Toph for earth, Katara for water, Zuko for fire, as like they're the main characters to represent each element? Is that kind of what's being talked about here? Or does one of those characters drop out and we're talking about Sokka? Not really sure what's being referred to there. But yeah, very much a fighting mechanics game, so learning combos. It will be approachable to players of, like, say, Super Smash Bros. Brawl and the other Super Smash Bros. Games. There's some sort of a talk about how to balance avatars, with the idea that, like, an Aang would have access to all 4 elements, but how does that work when it's, say, Aang versus Zuko, and they're going for the idea that Zuko's going to have better fire than Aang's fire, but Aang will have, I guess, the variety. So that's kind of an interesting idea there. But with the fighting game, it is more like, yeah, we need to see it to really get more of a sense for what's going on. Getting into the AAA RPG game, here's the key information here. So it's confirmed to be open world action RPG. So open world was not specifically mentioned in the article yesterday, but it gets confirmed here. It's going to be available on PC, consoles, new gen, of course, makes sense. So it is a full-on game. The worry that, like, it's going to get transformed into, like, a mobile game is not the case. They're going for something big here, of course. Apparently he said you get to create your own Bender/character, but you are also playing as the Avatar. So obviously there's some confusion here about, I suppose, what the exact wording here. All 4 nations are available, and for instance, I suppose he said you could explore bossing, say, etc. Now, this is kind of where we get into a weird thing here of, like, how character customization is this going to be, player character? Because I think people want a game where you do get to just make your own character in the world of Avatar and go with that. But that seems very weird to do with a new Avatar. Because the second you do that, it means you can't really lock in too many details about, like, that character. Like, they can't be from a specific element, even though they're at a specific point in the cycle. So my guess here probably is that the Avatar is a set-in-stone character, and more than likely, the created character is probably the Avatar's, like, first or main companion, because they did mention in the article yesterday that you will fight, you play as the Avatar, but you have companions with you. So maybe there's one character who's always with you, so you get the benefit of having a very story-driven Avatar character who you mainly play as to have all 4 elements. But then the main support character is technically you, like your own created character, who can be from any nation, which is very cool. Because of the timeline of this game, it is more, I suppose, what Bender or sort of what lineage you have rather than specifically what nation, just because with the time period we're talking about here, it's pre-4 Nations, basically, because the working title for the game is apparently Ice Wars. It's set 7,000 years ago, and again, remember, the history of the Avatar is 10,000 years. The first Avatar, Avatar 1, to Avatar Korra, is 10,000 years exactly of history, basically. So this is set 7,000 years ago. So it's 3,000 years after 1. So we're quite a bit of a ways into the Avatar cycle, but we're super far away from anything, like, super recognizable as, like, the modern Avatar world. So the plot of the game apparently revolves around some sort of a natural disaster. A volcano erupts and is starting a new ice age, and you're the new Avatar in the middle of this. You have to discover yourself, go on a journey. There will be a new villain who, I don't know what, made the volcano erupt. That could be quite interesting. And then here's the details here. Brian made key art, and we will see on the video version of the podcast on Tuesday. So Brian Konietzko, key art for the video game on Tuesday. Hard to know what to make of that, in that, like, key art obviously will be like a poster style thing, and very clean art. Obviously likely won't be super representative of, like, the graphics of the game, but will more be just a visual to highlight kind of what we're going for here. So depending on what we see in terms of, like, will we actually get to see the Avatar? Will it be a kind of look at the world potentially to see what's different overall? Kind of interesting. Estimated release is apparently 2027/2028, but don't hold him to that, because these games always have delays and they want to do it right, which is the correct approach to have with this. AAA games especially take a really long time to make, And it seems like they have announced this one very early on in development. So this is not coming out for a good few years. By the time this comes out, we'll be well into Avatar Studios. We'll likely have 2 or 3, maybe even more of the animation projects, and this will come out kind of hopefully in the middle of Avatar, just going from strength to strength, hopefully. And then I guess they discuss other stuff as well. They are looking into VR, and they want more narratively driven games. They want casual games, puzzle games, lots coming in the next 5 years. So they've got big plans for games of all sorts of shapes and sizes, which is kind of interesting overall. And then, yeah, it seems like everyone has the same reaction when it comes to Realms Collide, of like, yeah, building your own empire as like air nomads, for instance, doesn't feel super Avatar-like, but that's just the situation with that game, where because it is mostly an Avatar kind of reskin of a kind of existing kind of game system, it's a bit of a weird situation. But yeah, some nice details here. Given how early it is, this is really good stuff to know. Like, specifically 7,000 years ago. The plot is about kind of a natural disaster threatening a new ice age, which is super interesting because it's like, okay, so I guess that sort of relates to, at the very least, it kind of brings probably Fire Nation stuff into play, because there's a lot of volcanoes in and around the Fire Nation, Fire Islands, but then icy areas would be the water tribes. But it's 7,000 years ago, which likely is pre, Southern Water Tribe formation, and you kind of wonder, is that going to be an element that maybe comes into play here, that something happening up here, whatever the Water Tribe is at this point in time, are they going to get involved in this situation? And this is also potentially where what nation is the actual Avatar in this story from could also come into play. And then who is the villain and what nation are they from? Super interesting overall. And then it seems like there at least is some sort of a character creator type thing in play. And it seems like they're trying to get the best of both worlds in terms of having that I'm playing as a character in the Avatar world, but there's still strong story elements at play here. Because you don't want to lose kind of, I suppose, either of those things overall, which is kind of interesting. So, again, it kind of mainly echoes, I think, what I talked about in my video yesterday, which is just that in the same way that Paramount seemed committed to Avatar as being a major franchise for them, with the fact that there are multiple animation projects coming on the horizon, the same for video games. We've gone from barely getting anything and it just feeling like there's major problems when it comes to video games, to they're confirming a lot of games, including at least one big one, and then one in a more specific genre, of course, but one that very much interests people, and Avatar seems to lean quite heavily in terms of a really well done Avatar fighting game. If that community latches onto it, that could be a really cool thing to have for the video games as well. It probably just depends on how many characters there are going to be, because I think a lot of people are like, 10 characters at launch? Is that it? Because even if you go for the idea of like, okay, like it's Team Avatar, so full Team Avatar, it's like the main cast, Suki maybe in there as well, Iroh, Azula, Ozai, but then like, is that too many firebenders then all of a sudden? And then are we talking about like, Boomy, Paku, those type of characters, and then a variety of other ones. We assume everything is going to be to a certain degree Avatar Legends. So is it just ATLA, or are we bringing Korra into play? Then all of a sudden you have Korra, Bolin, Mako, plus the Korra villains are really, really interesting as well. You have Asami, and then on the Avatar side of things, like Ty Lee, May, and then especially if you do bring in like a lot of the other avatars, that's quite interesting. Their casts of characters is a bit of an interesting one for a game like this. Would they put like a Rangi in here? Not overly sure, but cool to know. Maybe gives you the sense that it's maybe not the biggest scope of game, but we have to wait and see what it is. We really have no information on it just yet. But again, remember, This podcast, where you will get to listen to the details yourself, is coming out on Tuesday, and the video version, where there will be at least a piece of key art from Brian about it, we will get to see that, I guess, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and who knows, maybe they'll reveal it beforehand. I do think it's a very weird situation that the most of the information about this game has been like for a few days now. It's going to be behind a paywall and then will be made public a few days later. It's just a weird way to do it in terms of just making the information feel a little bit fractured. Whereas imagine yesterday they put out the IGN exclusive, and then like a few hours later they just released the podcast as like a premiere, and everyone was just able to see it, and we got the visuals then and there, instead of now it's just like we got news, and then nearly a week later we're going to get the rest of it. It's a bit frustrating, but that's that. In terms of other news, just I'll fit this in right at the end. Awakening of Roku, so this is Chronicles of the Avatar Book 6, has apparently been delayed. Now, they saying it's now coming out October 14th, 2025. Previously, it was like July 15th, I think it was. So, pretty heavy delay there, like 3 months of delays. The only thing I would say about this is that the first Roku book, Reckoning of Roku, also got a delay. But then they reversed that delay, and the book still came out in July. I think it got delayed into August, and then back into July. So maybe that's just happening here. Maybe they kind of are pushing it out just because if things go poorly, they might need to use this date. But in the background, if things do go well, the July date is still there, and they can switch it back if they have to. I never really know what the full situation is about how kind of clear-cut they are about the dates, so far in advance. It is a weird situation now, where it means like the book is from now still over a year away. But anyway, like that's just that there. Something to keep an eye on. My guess is that either it just is coming out in October now, or it will get reverted back to July. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on all of this news. So we have a few extra details about the Avatar fighting game and the AAA open world Avatar RPG. Now, what are your thoughts on this details here? 7,000 years ago, a natural disaster about to cause an ice age. There is a villain involved. All this stuff. What are your thoughts? Let me know. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.